Hi, I'm Seamless, and today I'm going to be doing the making of the basses, just the basses, and Calibrate, my latest track. I'll be covering the rest of the stuff as well. Just for now, I'm just doing basses because I'm pressed for time in my day-to-day life. So the section I'm going to go over is the main drop part. This more or less covers all the basses that I have active in this track. I think so. Yeah, they all happen in the main drop. So I'll discuss how they're made, and then I'll also go over how I arranged them and such. So I'm going to play the beginning of the first drop, and it's kind of loud. So be ready in 3, 2, 1. So that more or less covers everything. I'm going to disable some stuff, and we can listen to them by themselves. Alright, so I guess the logical first place to start would be that guy there. So this is an FM bass, and the only processing, there's processing involved, but the important processing is that I'm running it through a Vocodex, but I'm running it through it by itself. That is to say that it is its own modulator and its own carrier. I did that because when you do that, run a sound through it as its own carrier and modulator, what you can do to the sound is kind of limited, but what happens is still pretty cool. And what I did here was to basically give it a more kind of like a wetter sound, and also to bring the pitch of the formant sound just a little bit, just because of the way that vocoder processes lets you do that. And stuff. So the Vocodex setup is static. I don't really modulate any of the parameters inside Vocodex. What's happening here is I have a pretty high bandwidth setting, not a lot of attack release, and the internal pitching arrangement is as such, which just brings down this section and keeps this section up so that I can keep the high end definition going on while I'm also lowering things. I have the modulator bandwidth multiplier is basically kind of like a saturating effect, in the sense that if I brought it all the way this way, the bands would be very sharp in response to the EQ analysis of the modulator input. If I brought it this way, it's wider response to the modulator input, which would result in sounding more like the carrier. And however, in this regard, because the carrier is the modulator, you could be pretty wet without it sounding too sharp and glassy, because it does have a kind of a glassy effect. And so that's what's going on there. I'm letting the carrier go through in a low end. I'm also disabling the low end in the output of the Vocodex through the gain multiplier here, multiplier window. Which is what that sounds like. Now the patch itself is sort of a departure from what I've been doing with my modern FM stuff. When I say modern FM stuff, I mean, when I first started, I was doing stuff like this, but then I stopped for reasons. However, I found that I could do cool things with particular additions of stuff that I did, because anything I just said made sense. But I'll show you anyway. So what's happening is that per usual in the FM setup, I'm modulating operator 1 with a triangle wave in operator 2, but it's just slightly off phase, and I'm controlling the phase in the oscillator window here with these little bars here, because you put up a bar, and then this is amplitude for harmonics, and then down here is the phase of the harmonics. So that's what's up with that. And as I said, you can add harmonics. So what I did is that the vowely sound, not sneezing, the vowely sound that you get is the result of having high harmonics engaged in with the fundamental tone FMing an output operator. The output operator, of course, being a sine wave. But early on, the first time I figured this out, I just put in a high harmonic in with the same op. So like operator 2 was the fundamental and then also the high harmonic, which works. And then later I discovered that you could do the high harmonic separately in another operator, then you can modulate that operator separately and do some complex things. And that was a lot of the FM stuff that I've been doing. But actually, Bass Antics, which featured some of my earliest FM experiments, utilized this setup. And so I looked back into that because some of that sounded kind of cool. So what we're doing here is that I have operator 2 with this setup inside it. And I'm modulating operator 2 by operator 3 by a very small amount, like 2%. And there's just a little bit of additional, like quietly additional harmonics, and that adds a little bit of extra, like, juice to the sound. I'm just going to disable. So that's what that sounds like by itself. And I'm going to disable 5 because that's important. That's the effect that 3 has on 1 there. Now I also have operator 5 modulating operator 2. And I'm controlling this. I believe I'm controlling, yes. I'm controlling this with modifier Y. And that's what this is here. This is the secondary FM input. And the higher up this is, the more squelchy it is. And then the lower it is, the more clear the vowel sound is. And it also kind of messes with the vowel just a tiny bit. However, if you were just to set this up the way that you saw it here, it wouldn't quite sound right. And that's because the operators are most of them anyway, are kind of off phase. And that really, I mean, it just very, very seriously changes the dynamic of the sound. Like, observe. And that's before I go in, I have this whole thing set up. I appear to have broken it a little bit. And the Vocodex is fine, but like I said, it has really profound effects on the sound. So be careful with that, obviously. I don't really worry about it because I already released a track, and so it sounds like it's supposed to. And I'm just not going to save the file because I'm smart. And this next sound, you see it's labeled WT1. What does WT stand for? Well, if you use Massive at all, you will probably feel familiar with that. And that stands for wavetable. And that's because I have experimented with building a wavetable in Massive in Harmor. It's not really a wavetable per se. It's a one-dimensional wavetable, which is basically just turns into wave scanning. But what this is if you take a sound, any sound, and you shift drop it into the image section here, it turns it into a single moment's representation of the waveform, which is different than what you would do normally, which it would basically resynthesize the audio in time and in harmonics. But doing it this way has its particular benefits, but I'll be doing a whole separate video on how that works. But basically what this is a series of sounds that I plucked out of, I forget what. I don't remember what I plucked it out of, but I'm using it as a sort of a secondary coloring of the sound, because like the results you get out of dropping in particular sounds like I just described are not very pronounced. At least not the ones that I experimented with. They're not very pronounced, but they do result in very interesting colorations of the sound after I apply the usual stuff that I do in Harmor, which is unison and EQing and making all kinds of reseed distortion kind of business, and then also modulating it with a filter. The simplest filter setup of all time. And this is just some slide note action. Not very confusing. This one, however, this is another WT, and I like it. I like it a lot. This guy, I do remember what I used to make the wavetable here. And these are actually snippets of sections of my own voice that I recorded. And even though I put in a whole bunch, I really only am using the first two. And along with modulating the WT position, which is what this does, I'm also modulating the square to saw timbre mix, and then also a filter. But I don't really use the filter in the drop, but I do use it in the beginning. That's what that sound is. It's that bass with a filter on it. And so that's what that is. And then we come back to the FM patch with the Vocodex, and then we have the original WT, and then we have this, which also is the main bass for the B part of the drop. So the PW here stands for phase verb, because this bass was constructed with the phase warble effect that I talked about in a previous How to Bass, which had where you use the detune function under distortion, and that creates a warble based on the fact that what the detune does is that it moves all the harmonics away from the fundamental, and that creates the kind of Ricci phase warble that you get when you normally do pitch detuning, which I'm also doing, and we need to distort it together, which isn't really happening now so much because I also have a phaser engaged, which you can clearly see causing that. But if you look at the phaser, you're probably wondering what's going on here. Like, why is it more pronounced here? Why is it blurring away? What's up with this phaser? And you're not even using a custom phaser shape. Like, that's not what that phaser shape does. Explain it to me. Tell me what's happening. Well, if you go to this drop down menu, you see this little tab here called phaser mask. And what this does is you can actually determine where and how, like where on the spectrum and how hard the phaser is applied. How cool is that? So, there's not a lot of rhythmic automation going on in this one. In fact, there's not at all. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. So the phaser, I have it set to keyboard track. And you can see what that means is I hit different notes, and the phasing is following that, as opposed to if I were to have that off, the phaser would just go where it's going. It would just be this shape forever, regardless of what note I'm playing, which is all fine and good. And what this also does is that when I pitch slide, the phaser will move like with the slide, which causes that particular fast warble just then. So that you can see it right there, it's following the pitch, and in doing so, it's creating a faster phase until it hits the note that's on. And it's not to say that it's faster for any one note. It's just faster when it's traveling down, because also if it travels up, you can see it kind of stays there, but if I bring it back down, it's faster. So that's because I have keyboard tracking engaged, which is a lot of fun. And you can also, like right now it's 1-to-1, and you can make it opposite, where it goes up, it'll do that, and it goes back down, it will go slow. But I like keeping it like that, so I can do that, which is just cool. It's a cool effect. And I also have this piled on with a resampled version of it. And that was resampled in... I labeled it. This guy here. I just did one step. I didn't really. I wasn't going for a resampled sound when I made this. I wasn't trying to make like third watch or anything. I was I knew that I was going to add this on top of the other one because I wanted to make it beefier. But like my standard compression and EQ tricks weren't working, so I decided I'll just pile on a new resampled version of it, and then it gets its own thing. And so now the sound this is basically the most layering I've ever done anything ever in order to make a different sound, but it's the same sound. And I only really used one thing for it because I made the main version of it, and then also the like 3 or 4 fills. Do as I say. That's interesting though, because I did do one that was more in like the pitch warble. Yeah, right there. Like this is bigger than the other one, but because there's still the same rhythm, it wasn't really noticeable as a difference. Like we can't tell that the two things are different. It still sounds like one sound, which is important. They work as a layer, but that's what this sound is. It's a phase verb. That's what's up with that sound. There's not much else to that. I believe I've covered what these all are doing. And some of and when I get time, I'll focus on what the other sounds were in this track, as well as the drums and also the mixing. But I hope that this can tide you over until then. If you would like this project file for yourself, you can go to the original track video, the playthrough, and you can look at the link in the description to purchase the FLP file of this track. And it's pay what you want for that, so you can pay like $1, or you can give me like 30 if you are that awesome. And it is FLP. It's a zip file because there's some things that aren't like stock FL stuff, but most of it is. I mean, obviously it's mostly hardware, except for a couple FM stuff. I'm using entirely FL effects. That's kind of how I roll. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I will attempt to answer them. And as usual, have a nice day.